And welcome to another episode of Relationship Real Talk with my relationship experts, hosted by my NFT. Today we have episode 5 with Dr. Rob and Dr. Lynne of my relationship experts, which will be focusing a bit more on discerning within couples, I'd say, ecosystem, as well as being single. To kick things off, one of the things that I think the topics we were just sharing around what does discernment mean within a relationship? I know to you all, I mean, from a singles lens, it might be a little different from a couples lens, but one thing that we've touched on in your Substack articles is from the singles lens, how do you even start discerning? And then from the couples end, what do you think you have versus what you actually have? So I would love for you all both to maybe start by unpacking. I'll let you choose either the singles portion of what does it mean to just start discerning when trying to find a relationship, or maybe the couple's lens.
Yeah, I'm going to take the ball and I'm going to hand it right off. Lynn.
What?
Yes, that's right. Because this is one of your favorite topics. You're always talking about when you're dating, you're talking about the representative.
Yes, you got to make sure that you bring forth the yeah.
But how do you discern if the person you're dating is authentic or you're still talking with the representative?
Ooh.
They need to make sure that if a person's not bringing forth their true self, what happens later on is they end up trying to stay that representative instead of their authentic self, and then you can't keep up with that. So that's why it's best that you bring forth your true self in the beginning of a relationship. Period.
Yeah. So as we're talking about you yourself, say you're out there dating.
Okay.
Please don't do that because we married. I don't want you to start doing that again. But let's say you are out there dating.
Okay.
And you know in your heart, I need to bring my authentic self. I can't bring out this representative because I can't maintain that persona.
Okay.
So you go out with the intentionality not to bring your representative. And then you're sitting down with this ever so handsome guy named Rob. And you see him for 60, 90 minutes at a time, maybe 2 times a week, 3 if he's really lucky. But that's all you see him. How can you discern that the Rob that you're talking to is authentic or a representative?
I mean, because the conversation that you have with each other, and you make sure that you are, like I said, you are bringing forth your true who you are. I mean, that would, if this conversation starts to go to the left, I mean, that's...
So if I start to become inconsistent in what I'm saying.
There you go.
I see.
You want to make sure the conversation is staying here.
What about how I treat other people?
You want to make sure that you're treating people this way.
So here's a great example. I'm wining her. I'm dining her. I'm buying her whatever she wants. She wants the appetizer. Get the most expensive one. Whatever you want on the menu. I'm going to get you the dessert that you want. If you want the top shelf champagne, let's do it. I'm opening doors for you all night. I'm picking you up. Just being super gentlemanly all night long. And then the waitress brings out my steak and it's medium well instead of medium.
Okay.
And I ball her out.
Then that means you're being mean to that person.
That's an example of I was showing you my representative, but in a moment of weakness when I'm under duress, the true me comes out.
Okay.
That's an example.
Well, I wanna peel that back a little more because I thought that example was maybe going to be something I maybe relate more to in terms of that consistency. I was thinking you were gonna go more because this is something I personally dealt with. So for the singles out there, maybe you can relate to this. But sometimes going a little too above and beyond that first date. Where you wine and dine, you pick one of the nicer restaurants in the area that you're in, and then it's like, okay, I gotta do better the next time. I just picked the nicest restaurant already. So and I found personally that definitely, and I think we've talked about this in another episode, starting with like a coffee shop, right? That was something I had to learn over time because it's hard to consistently, especially if you're not, if maybe, and maybe I was playing the high roller that I wasn't. So it was tough to keep that consistency of, hey, we're going to be eating, wining and dining you every Saturday type thing. So I almost thought you were going down that route. And that is something that I personally had to dial it back because obviously that wasn't a real consistent maybe think I could have done at the time versus, yeah. What are your thoughts around that?
See, now that's different to me. Now, some people might think it's an issue that you where they say that you are giving too much of yourself in the beginning. Some people really want for you to give as much information as you can. Some people don't. So that right there, I don't know. I think it depends on the person, honestly.
To
What do you
me,
think?
consistency
Of
goes
course.
a whole lot further than a big splash.
So no big splash on the first date.
See, I don't know that I would. For me, I want to bring my authentic self, and I want you to get to know who I am on the everyday. Because, like you said, I can't be that. I can't be Superman every day.
Okay, but on our first date, we kind of went.
Okay. So let's go there for just a moment.
Yeah, that's
My
okay.
my typical when I was dating, past tense, right? So when I was dating, my typical was to meet someone. Not, I wouldn't even call it a date. I just call it a meetup. I want to get to know who I'm talking with in an, in a situation, in a venue where I can bolt if I need to.
Okay.
So a coffee shop. I could even be nice and buy a cup of coffee for her, for me. We can sit and chat. We can have a cup of tea, whatever. But if she opens her mouth and mess comes out, I can quickly exit instead of having to wait for the check or wait for the bill. And that's not being mean. It's really a matter of not wasting her time or mine. But with Lynn, I don't know. I just invited her to dinner.
It was something about me.
Yeah, there was something about you. And
And there's something about me.
and we sat down, we had sushi, and we shut down the place just talking. It was amazing.
So to your point, so obviously, this is relationships are on one size fits all. The tips that you're giving or perspective you're given is not the same that everyone is experiencing. But what I picked out of that conversation, that yes, you did have, I would say maybe the more traditional path forward given your past experience, but maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my next question was going to be to you all: how long was it till that first dinner versus maybe it was earlier on if you're inviting someone out to get to know them more, the coffee date comes first. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I feel that during either the conversation, texting, whatever, or FaceTiming, not face to face, you are discerning in both situations. So just because you didn't have the coffee date first that maybe usually have, doesn't mean there wasn't any discernment going into that dinner, or that there wasn't a path of discerning through text messages, phone calls, whatever may have happened there, that you felt, okay, I feel comfortable enough to skip the coffee. I don't know. That was what I sort of picked up. It seemed like there was already some discernment going on. He didn't just say, "Oh no, this is the one," after she said, "Hey, let's go to dinner."
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I could pick up that there was something different about her because she had already had a number of. We met online. And so whenever a woman is online, it's very, very easy to quickly get disgusted with all the mess that's coming at you. I don't know if guys still say, hey, I can come over, we can, I'll cook you dinner, we can watch Netflix and chill. You know what that means. She wasn't doing that. But I wasn't acting like that.
No.
And between her profile and the way she talked, it was clear that she wasn't that kind of girl. Now, I will
That's
say, yeah, I
no,
will say,
no. I was just about to lean into that, recalling past stories, and I think the profile was part of that discernment. It wasn't. You could tell. It seemed like she put time into her profile, and you put time into your profile. You
yeah.
both were not there to play games.
No.
You asked the question, how many days was it between meeting her online and the actual dinner? 5 days. 5 days. And whenever I was dating online, I want to very quickly move to IRL, in real life, right? Because no one wants to be, what's the word, catfished, right? And so one way to assure that they're not being catfished is to meet the person in person.
In person.
And, that was just, I wasn't pushing to a point where it was uncomfortable for her, because it's also uncomfortable for a woman to meet a guy in person that she just met online and that's all she knows about. So I can definitely understand that, respect that. So of course you meet in public places, you let her choose the place. And it's just kind of public knowledge. It wasn't say, hey, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go to some place that I'll surprise you with. You can't do that if someone you don't know yet. So I think she picked up that I was respecting her, and I picked up that, well, she wasn't just one of those other kind of women.
I was gonna ask Dr. Lynn next what maybe her past or dating was like before, or what led her to. Have you been on dinners before?
She
Or
don't know how to date.
Yeah,
yeah, because I don't think that like that you it seems like you were past that, but obviously something in you felt that hey, seems like a nice different guy.
yes. Um, Again, his profile, everything one that I was actually really truly looking for and having a chance to pause. I think that was what it was. Because I don't think, yeah, my past relationships, there was no pause. It was like a full steam ahead.
A sprint, not.
Red, like I think, yeah, both times. But this time it was intentional. I intentionally, you know, stopped. And I would definitely have to say the intentional stopping was because at the point that I was in my life at that I still am. I definitely was. God was like first. He's like I had got really truly gotten back to walking in my faith and stuff with God and putting Him first over everything and everyone, which what you should do. And like I said, prayer, was to find somebody that, like I said, has this, the heart, for him.
And I think this is actually a little bit, I, I think merging or coinciding with our last episode, which we did just strictly on X. So some of you might have missed that, but we had a speaker jump into the panel, and he was just sharing a bit about how he would maybe share too much that first date. And I know, like we say all the time, religion and politics are sometimes the worst things to talk about to anyone. But how early did you all discuss that? Was it a major factor for that first date? Yeah, I would love for you to share, like, number one, maybe how the discussion came up, and number two, when that became like a big factor for you to both to say, "Hey, we're not going any further unless this." And I feel like most people, at least maybe my age dating, they sometimes don't have those like non-negotiables, right? And that goes back to what am I allowing versus what am I playing blind to, and what is actually important to me. Because if you keep playing blind to things that are important to you, then that person may not be who you think they are, or you want them truly to be. But yeah, I would love to hear the original question I asked, which was around the topic of faith.
Wow.
You want to go first?
We really didn't talk about it all that much.
Really?
Okay.
Well, the reason why I say that is because that was an initial filter.
Yeah.
Our both of our profiles was very clear, very explicit about the relationship and the walk that we had.
Yes.
And in fact, there were times that I would receive a woman reaching out to me online, and based on her profile and or based on what she was saying, I had the question, did you even read mine? I mean, you see what I stand for, you see what I'm after, and this is just the complete opposite. And that's when I flexed my block muscles.
Yeah.
It wasn't even worth a response. And one of the things that she'll point out is that she looked at my profile and she read it, and it was saying everything that she was praying for. And so if it didn't pass that initial filter, she never would have reached out to me. So we already had that in common before we even exchanged words interactively.
That's a really good point. I think that's at times is really the benefit and the pro of having the profiles. I know in the past I personally have spent time with the profile. Sometimes just been like, okay, let's just find something witty. But at the end of the day, it has to be. I found out that the more serious I took my profile, the more serious my matches were. And I think that was huge. Is like, okay, Richard, are you just out there to catch anything, or Richard, are you out there to find the one, right? And I think that was a turning point in as a single. when I was like, yeah, well, no wonder I say these things don't work because like I'm not really sharing anything about like I'm not sharing my authentic self because
Yeah.
the person would not even know that hey, I truly enjoy like intellectual conversations. I'm looking for that, but I was maybe not always getting the most, so I had to switch up the profile a little bit. Anyway, so I think to your point, understanding a bit more about maybe more on the couple side, where do you feel you need to really set the boundaries in terms of sometimes I like to call it the honeymoon phase. I think I've said this in the past, where you sort of everything just is great, and oh, that was a little weird, or maybe I'm not too okay with that, but you know what, everything is great. But a week later, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but everything else is great. Can you maybe coach me on when you feel you got to just put the foot down? And I think going back to our the concept of the relationship you think you have versus the one you actually have.
We might be different on this, but go ahead.
You are different.
No, I'm talking about we may think different.
Oh, right. Then go ahead.
Really?
Go
You want
ahead.
me to go first? Okay. So I think that you really need to start making sure that it's in the beginning that you should set, rules, your boundaries should be. That's again, that's good as far as discernment. You should be looking at all the different things that the person is bringing forth. You don't want a pink flag. You don't want a red flag. You don't want to even overlook those. Again, that's why I say I think we might be different when it comes to that because I think that people when they do see those different pink or red flags, because it's gonna start off pink and then it's gonna go to red. But when you start to see those different things, I think it's when you need to have that conversation with that person. Because again,
Mm.
that may truly not be your person. Because not to say that, because we know nobody's perfect.
But they married now.
No, no, no.
That is your person.
Are you talking about?
So he's asking in the beginning of the marriage, you get back from the honeymoon.
Oh,
Well, yeah, but I think both sides are open to discussion. Like, I
so on
mean,
the single
I
side of that, then okay. But
yeah.
then yeah, if you're married, then
You
you.
know, we Christian counselors. You can't say you came back from the honeymoon and realize it's not your person.
Oh no, sorry. I thought it was in the look. Sorry, I went to the single part of it. Okay, if you're married, those things should have been done honestly. We highly recommend, and I will say this over and over again. Premarital. Please get premarital. Not a day or two of premarital. You need premarital in every step before you say I do to someone.
Just to give you a hint about how serious at least Texas takes it, they have a program called Together in Texas. And if you go through a program or a counselor certified with Together in Texas, you actually get like $65 off your marriage license, which is actually a huge percentage of it. But the requirement for that counselor to be able to provide that ticket or that voucher is that you go through 8 hours. 8 hours of premarital counseling. So this isn't something that you just, hey, I go to church and, one evening, hour and a half, we had it, yay. No.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much. And we encourage couples to get deep, to get transparent, to unpack things like what are your expectations? Because unmet expectations is one of the biggest reasons why marriages fall apart. But you ask, when they get back from the honeymoon, soon do you start raising flags about, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that? Part of that comes during the premarital counseling, setting expectations, and trying to paint a picture of what life together is going to look like. For example, we are actually working with a couple right now, and praise God, they're not living together, but whenever they do marry, they'll be moving into her place. It's just a matter of how leases are working out. So we encourage them, before you move in, walk through her place and redesign it for both of you. Because you both have furniture, you both have dishes, you both have wall decorations, you both have, and so if one person just moves into the other's space, then it can feel like an invasion.
And again, we may differ with that topic. Again, we have, and that's another thing in marriage. I would definitely say that you need to find somewhere where it's not yours, it's not his, it's going to be y'all's together.
We totally agree on that. Totally agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason why they're doing it this way is because, well, we're
Uh-huh.
not asking people to break leases to do that.
Well, we're not.
So, but yeah, understanding what the environment's going to be like, how you're going to live together. And yeah, early on, if you find out that, hey, you want to stay up until like 2 a.m. every night playing video games in our bedroom while I have to go to work at 4 a.m., guess what? I'm going to need you to change something.
But again, that's why we highly recommend, because we want all of those type of things to come out during premarital. So whenever you come back for your honeymoon, you are still in that just wonderful stage. And honestly, not to say you're not gonna have disagreements. Again, during premarital, we kind of talk about those different things as far as having the disagreements and stuff with with each other. But we want you to be able to laugh with each other. I mean, not only laugh with each, we want you to have that moment where you still are just together and stay in line with each other, because that is highly important to stay that way. Because we don't, when one person starts drifting to the left, another part starts drifting to the right, you're not staying in line. That oneness, you have to go come back together. So again, that's why it's always important to really and truly know your person well.
And I think this is touches on one of our focuses for today's conversation, that maybe we'll do two more and wrap up for today. And that had to do with why couples operate off assumptions. Why do you all think couples tend to operate off of assumptions?
Wow. Why do we operate off of assumptions?
Goodness. Right.
I can tell you this from a sales lens, which probably relates very much to relationships. Because at a time, I would say, early on, you. Well, actually, I take that back. I feel sales is misunderstood as well as I think selling is as well. That is to say, I was about to say at times maybe you're overselling yourself on understanding that person to the point that that yeah you then make those assumptions, because the last thing that they tell you to do in sales is to make assumptions, because the worst thing you want to hear when it's the end of the quarter, end of the half, end of the fiscal year, and you told your manager, "Hey, I got this deal coming in," and it's the and it's the last day of the quarter, and they're like, "Hey, what happened to that deal?" It's like, "Well, they told me they were gonna sign." When? you know, did you tell you? So that has personally taught me, not just in sales though, but outside of sales, when I really don't understand something. Actually, in sales, yes, that's a common scenario. Assuming in any type of relationship and thinking they meant this, or I thought they meant this, that they were going to pick up that order of food because they were near it, but really they were saying, "Oh no, I'm near there working today. I do not have the time." But those type of communication assumptions, I've fallen guilty to so many times, that especially if it's something very important, I make sure I over communicate, even though it's like it may look dumb, but I just want to confirm that this is what we both understand.
No, that's perfect. I would say the assuming, oh my gosh, that is huge. When you said it, I was just like, man, you don't assume stuff. Don't assume that, that he's going to continue eating the same thing over and over and over and over again. Really communicate. We highly recommend whenever we are, talking to anyone, communication, whether we're talking to singles, whether we're talking to couples, communication is key. Do not assume anything, because when you assume something, you don't know if that one minute that person might really truly either like something or they love something, and then it may change, so it's never, I feel like it's never assumed, I don't know, it's just,
I'd say that the reason why people assume so quickly is because they don't know how to ask.
Mm,
it's good. It's really good.
It's
yes.
a wonderful thing to encourage people, hey, communicate more. But if you don't know how to communicate, and it's not just a matter of knowing how to communicate, it's knowing how to communicate with your spouse.
And communicate well.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
communication is a two-way street.
It
There's
is.
what I say, and there's what's perceived. And if I'm not speaking in a language that my spouse can understand, and I'm not talking like English versus Spanish, I'm not talking love versus apathy and hatred. I'm just talking, am I expressing in a way that resonates with my wife? And if I don't know how to do that, then I could have the greatest, deepest, most beautiful intentions in the world. And if it's received wrong, it doesn't matter what my intentions were. Which is actually the reason why we encourage people to take the Interpulse, the hero assessment,
Yes.
because that it doesn't just help us as counselors. For us, if you think of like a brain surgeon, before he goes in with his scalpel, he takes a look at your imaging to see what's in there. What am I operating on? So I can be very surgical, be very accurate in the treatment that I provide. And that's what the hero report does for us. Mm-hmm. It allows us to see the marital dynamics at a deeper level than perhaps in your own marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But it's broken down in such a way that it's so easy to understand that couples can start to see themselves, understand their own imaging, and then they can see, oh, well, this is why my husband responded that way. This is why my wife reacted this way. And they can start to see how to be a better spouse. It even gives you details right down to, hey, in this area, this is how to make a more harmonious home environment for your spouse. And if we all just did those little intentional things to make home more harmonious, man.
Yeah, you just made me think of, I think I maybe heard this analogy spun off differently in another lens or comparison. However, I think what you just shared there was essentially saying, if we only took as much time to understand ourselves and our relationships as we took in binge watching that last Netflix episode, and not saying that's not a great way to build a relationship and bond and this and that, but okay, after that Netflix episode, if everything is crap, then maybe we should spend some time outside of that Netflix episode. But I think that's your point. I was like, only if we spent as much time to understand ourselves and our relationships,
And that's what
that
this
would
yes
help.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm guilty of this. I've been in my self-help books and this and that, but I had like a short 2 years where I dove deep in that. And I think about this every other year, every other day. Why am I got to get back to that. Like it's starting to lose its juice, all right, you got to pump back that resource, that well. So yeah, I think to your point, that was such a great way of saying there are tools out there. You don't have to figure it out on yourself. There are tools and people out there that can help you not just understand who you are and what you're looking for and how best to find what you're looking for, but also who your person is, but likely with their traits, their personalities, and how you can deal with it, knowing who you are, and vice versa. Amazing. Well, I think that is quite a good way to wrap us up for today in discernment, overall discernment from a single and couples lens. Again, we want to thank our My Relationship experts, Dr. Lynne and Dr. Rob, for another amazing episode of insights, perspectives, and knowledge. We appreciate everyone for tuning in on this video episode, and we look forward to seeing you tune in. Maybe leave some comments, questions. We'd love to hear from our folks, and you'll get a response directly from Dr. Rob and Dr. Lynne. Thank you all again for your time, and see you on the next episode.
Thank you, and God bless.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Awesome.